In the quiet suburbs of Wichita, Kansas, there lived a man his neighbors described as ordinary, reliable, even helpful. He went to church every Sunday. He led the Boy Scouts. He attended neighborhood meetings. He mowed his lawn on schedule. His name was Dennis Rader, and for 31 years, he was one of the most wanted killers in American history. This is his story. But more importantly, this is the story of the 10 people he murdered, the people whose names deserve to be spoken, whose lives deserve to be remembered, not his. To understand the BTK case, you first need to understand Wichita, Kansas in the 1970s. A mid-sized American city on the flat plains of the Midwest. Population around 280,000. An economy built on aircraft manufacturing, agriculture, and oil. It was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked, where neighbors knew each other's names, where the worst crimes were bar fights and burglaries. No one in Wichita in 1973 could have imagined what was about to happen, or who was about to do it. The suburbs of Wichita were the living definition of the American dream. Neat rows of identical houses, green lawns, children playing outside until dark. A community built on trust, on the belief that your neighbors were exactly who they appeared to be. That belief was about to be shattered. Because hidden inside that community, attending the same churches, shopping at the same stores, waving from the same driveways, was a man living an unimaginable double life. Park City, a quiet suburb just north of Wichita. Modest homes, calm streets, the kind of place where nothing ever happens. This is where Dennis Lynn Rader lived. This is where he raised his family, where he attended church, where he worked as a compliance officer, knocking on doors, issuing citations, and forcing rules. And this is where the BTK Killer slept at night. In a house, on a street, surrounded by people who had absolutely no idea. Dennis Lynn Rader was born March 9, 1945 in Pittsburgh, Kansas. The oldest of 4 boys. His father worked for the Kansas Gas and Electric Company. His mother was a bookkeeper. On the surface, a normal working-class family. But inside the mind of their eldest son, something was already wrong. Rader later admitted that even as a child, he experienced violent, controlling fantasies. Fantasies centered on domination, power, control over others. He didn't understand them. He didn't stop them, and most importantly, he never sought help. As a child, Rader didn't stand out. He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't disruptive. He wasn't the kid teachers worried about. He was quiet, forgettable, and that made him dangerous. Because he learned early how to blend in, how to wear a mask, how to show the world exactly what it expected, while hiding everything underneath. In 1966, Rader enlisted in the United States Air Force. He served for 4 years and was honorably discharged in 1970. His record was clean, no incidents, no warnings. But later he would say that during these years, his fantasies didn't stop. They grew. The structure of military life kept them contained for a while. After leaving the military, Rader enrolled at Wichita State University. He studied electronics, later administration of justice. He graduated in 1979. The future killer was studying the justice system, learning how investigations worked, understanding how criminals were caught. He was studying his future pursuers. During this time, he married Paula Dietz. They had 2 children, and for decades, she had no idea. Rader also worked for ADT Security Services. His job was to install alarm systems in homes, to find weaknesses, to identify entry points, to understand how someone could break in. The irony is impossible to ignore. The man hired to protect homes was quietly studying how to violate them. Every house he entered became part of a mental catalog. Potential targets, potential victims. January 15th, 1974. A cold Monday morning. Most people were at work. Most children were at school. At 803 North Edgemore Street, something was terribly wrong. The Otero family. A father, a mother, 2 children home that day. It seemed like an ordinary morning. It wasn't. When the older children returned home, the front door was unlocked. Inside, 4 members of their family were dead. Joseph Otero, Julie Otero, Joseph Jr., Josephina. Killed inside their own home. Dennis Rader was 28 years old. It was his first murder. It would not be his last. Police quickly realized this was different. There was no robbery, no clear motive, no signs of panic or chaos. This was planned, controlled, deliberate. Something systematic had begun, and it wasn't going to stop. The investigation faced immediate limits. No witnesses, no suspect, no DNA technology. Just a crime scene, and fear spreading across an entire city. And somewhere in that city, the killer was already thinking about what came next. For months, there were no answers. Then, in October 1974, a phone call led police to a hidden letter in a library book. The letter described the murders in detail only the killer could know. He was watching, he was listening, and now he was speaking. The letter was typed, calm, precise, and it contained a complaint. The killer was angry he wasn't getting attention. He signed it with a name, BTK, bind, torture, kill. He didn't just want to murder, he wanted to be known for it. When the letter became public, Wichita changed overnight. Fear spread, doors were locked, routines changed. The name BTK became permanent. Police launched a massive investigation. Tips flooded in, suspicion grew, and Dennis Rader watched it all unfold. Read every headline, followed every report, and felt something he would later describe as satisfaction. April 4th, 1974. Before the letter was even sent, Rader had already killed again. Kathryn Bright was 21 years old. She lived on South Hydraulic Street in Wichita. She had returned home with her brother Kevin when Rader, who had been hiding inside waiting for them, attacked. Kevin Bright was shot twice. Somehow, against all odds, he survived. He escaped and ran for help. Kathryn was not so fortunate. Kevin Bright became the only eyewitness to survive a BTK attack. His description of the attacker was given to police. A sketch was produced, but the sketch was generic enough that it matched thousands of men in Wichita, including Dennis Rader. The sketch produced from Kevin Bright's description showed a white male, average build, dark hair, unremarkable features. It was accurate. It looked like Dennis Rader. It also looked like roughly half the adult male population of Wichita, Kansas. In an era before DNA evidence, before digital databases, before facial recognition technology, a sketch like this was both everything and nothing. It confirmed the attacker was human. It confirmed he was male. It confirmed almost nothing else. Kevin Bright did everything right. He survived. He cooperated. He described what he saw. The system simply wasn't equipped to use what he gave them. The BTK killings continued. March 17, 1977. Shirley Vian was 24 years old, a mother of 3 young children. Rader had followed her home, having originally targeted a neighbor. He locked her children in the bathroom. He could hear them crying throughout. He killed their mother while they waited. The children were found hours later, still locked inside, when a neighbor finally heard them and called police. Shirley Vian's children survived. They grew up without their mother. The psychological damage of that day, locked in a bathroom, hearing what was happening on the other side of the door, is something no child should ever have to carry. Rader drove home afterward, had dinner with his family, went to bed. December 8, 1977. Nancy Fox was 25 years old. She lived alone in a small house in Wichita. Rader broke in and waited for her to come home from work. After killing her, he did something that shocked investigators. He walked to a nearby payphone and called police himself. He gave them the address. He told them what they would find. Then he hung up. He wanted the credit. He needed them to know it was him, that BTK had struck again. By the time officers reached the payphone to try and trace the call, he was gone. He was already home, already in bed, already sleeping. 250,000 names and no answers. By the late 1970s, the BTK investigation had become one of the largest in Kansas history. The task force had collected an extraordinary amount of material: letters, forensic evidence, witness statements, tips from the public. They had, in theory, everything they needed to identify the killer. What they lacked was the technology to process it all. This was the pre-computer era of law enforcement. Every tip was written on an index card. Every lead was filed manually. Every piece of evidence was cataloged by hand. By the time the investigation was at its peak, the BTK task force held over 250,000 individual names on index cards, 3 million separate documents. Dennis Rader's name was in there, multiple times. It was buried. The BTK task force was staffed by dedicated, hard-working detectives who were working under impossible conditions. They were dealing with a killer who left minimal physical evidence, who targeted victims apparently at random, who communicated with police and media in ways designed to mislead rather than reveal. They were also dealing with a killer who appeared completely normal in every aspect of his public life. Every person they interviewed about Dennis Rader said the same thing: he was normal. Nobody said there was something wrong with him, not one person. Throughout 1978, Rader continued sending letters and poems to police and local media. He was not hiding, he was performing. He wanted an audience, and he was creating one. In April 1979, Rader broke into the home of Anna Williams. He waited for hours. She never came home that night. He left. Later, he sent her a poem describing what he had planned. Anna Williams moved out and never returned. After 1979, BTK went quiet. No letters, no confirmed murders, no communication. Wichita slowly began to breathe again. But some investigators feared the truth, that he hadn't stopped because he couldn't. He had stopped because he chose to. Hidden in plain sight. During the silence, Dennis Rader's public life grew stronger. He became president of his church council, a trusted leader. He worked as a compliance officer, enforcing rules, exercising control. He was a Boy Scout leader, trusted with children. Everything about his life reinforced authority, control, respect. And nobody saw what was underneath. April 27th, 1985. Maureen Hedge, his neighbor. He killed her, then transported her body, took photographs, and went home, to his family, to sleep. December 8th, 1977. Nancy Fox was 25 years old. She lived alone in a small house in Wichita. Rader broke in and waited for her to come home from work. After killing her, he did something that shocked investigators. He walked to a nearby payphone and called police himself. He gave them the address. He told them what they would find. Then he hung up. He wanted the credit. He needed them to know it was him, that BTK had struck again. By the time officers reached the payphone to try and trace the call, he was gone. He was already home, already in bed, already sleeping. 250,000 names and no answers. By the late 1970s, the BTK investigation had become one of the largest in Kansas history. The task force had collected an extraordinary amount of material: letters, forensic evidence, witness statements, tips from the public. They had, in theory, everything they needed to identify the killer. What they lacked was the technology to process it all. This was the pre-computer era of law enforcement. Every tip was written on an index card. Every lead was filed manually. Every piece of evidence was cataloged by hand. By the time the investigation was at its peak, the BTK task force held over 250,000 individual names on index cards, 3 million separate documents. Dennis Rader's name was in there, multiple times. It was buried. The BTK task force was staffed by dedicated, hard-working detectives who were working under impossible conditions. They were dealing with a killer who left minimal physical evidence, who targeted victims apparently at random, who communicated with police and media in ways designed to mislead rather than reveal. They were also dealing with a killer who appeared completely normal in every aspect of his public life. Every person they interviewed about Dennis Rader said the same thing: he was normal. Nobody said there was something wrong with him, not one person. Throughout 1978, Rader continued sending letters and poems to police and local media. He was not hiding, he was performing. He wanted an audience, and he was creating one. In April 1979, Rader broke into the home of Anna Williams. He waited for hours. She never came home that night. He left. Later, he sent her a poem describing what he had planned. Anna Williams moved out and never returned. After 1979, BTK went quiet. No letters, no confirmed murders, no communication. Wichita slowly began to breathe again. But some investigators feared the truth, that he hadn't stopped because he couldn't. He had stopped because he chose to. Hidden in plain sight. During the silence, Dennis Rader's public life grew stronger. He became president of his church council, a trusted leader. He worked as a compliance officer, enforcing rules, exercising control. He was a Boy Scout leader, trusted with children. Everything about his life reinforced authority, control, respect. And nobody saw what was underneath. April 27th, 1985. Marine Hedge, his neighbor. He killed her, then transported her body, took photographs, and went home. To his family, to sleep. December 8th, 1977. Nancy Fox was 25 years old. She lived alone in a small house in Wichita. Rader broke in and waited for her to come home from work. After killing her, he did something that shocked investigators. He walked to a nearby payphone and called police himself. He gave them the address. He told them what they would find. Then he hung up. He wanted the credit. He needed them to know it was him, that BTK had struck again. By the time officers reached the payphone to try and trace the call, he was gone. He was already home, already in bed, already sleeping. 250,000 names and no answers. But 250,000 names and no answers. By the late 1970s, the BTK investigation had become one of the largest in Kansas history. The task force had collected an extraordinary amount of material: letters, forensic evidence, witness statements, tips from the public. They had, in theory, everything they needed to identify the killer. What they lacked was the technology to process it all. This was the pre-computer era of law enforcement. Every tip was written on an index card. Every lead was filed manually. Every piece of evidence was cataloged by hand. By the time the investigation was at its peak, the BTK task force held over 250,000 individual names on index cards, 3 million separate documents. Dennis Rader's name was in there multiple times. It was buried. The BTK task force was staffed by dedicated, hard-working detectives who were working under impossible conditions. They were dealing with a killer who left minimal physical evidence, who targeted victims apparently at random, who communicated with police and media in ways designed to mislead rather than reveal. They were also dealing with a killer who appeared completely normal in every aspect of his public life. Every person they interviewed about Dennis Rader said the same thing: he was normal. Nobody said there was something wrong with him, not one person. Throughout 1978, Rader continued sending letters and poems to police and local media. He was not hiding, he was performing. He wanted an audience, and he was creating one. In April 1979, Rader broke into the home of Anna Williams. He waited for hours. She never came home that night. He left. Later, he sent her a poem describing what he had planned. Anna Williams moved out and never returned. After 1979, BTK went quiet. No letters, no confirmed murders, no communication. Wichita slowly began to breathe again. But some investigators feared the truth, that he hadn't stopped because he couldn't. He had stopped because he chose to. Hidden in plain sight. During the silence, Dennis Rader's public life grew stronger. He became president of his church council, a trusted leader. He worked as a compliance officer, enforcing rules, exercising control. He was a Boy Scout leader, trusted with children. Everything about his life reinforced authority, control, respect. And nobody saw what was underneath. April 27, 1985, Maureen Hedge, his neighbor. He killed her, then transported her body, took photographs, and went home. To his family, to sleep. September 16, 1986, Vicki Wegerle, killed in her home. Her husband would spend 18 years under suspicion. He was innocent. January 19, 1991, Dolores Davis, his final victim. After her death, silence again. 13 years. 2004, BTK comes back. In 2004, a newspaper article revisited the case. Dennis Rader read it, and he could not stand being forgotten. He began writing again, sending packages, evidence, messages. He wanted attention, and he got it. Then he made a mistake. He asked police if a floppy disk could be traced. They told him it couldn't. It was a lie. He sent the disk, and in its metadata was everything. A church computer, a name, Dennis. 30 years of investigation suddenly had a suspect. DNA confirmed it. Surveillance followed. He had no idea. February 25, 2005. He was pulled over, and he knew. After 31 years, it was over. In court, he pled guilty. He described every murder, calmly, precisely. No emotion, just performance. He was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms. Part 10, The Reckoning. The community struggled. His family was shattered. Victims' families finally had answers, and one innocent man, after 18 years, was cleared. Dennis Rader remains in prison. He wanted to be remembered, but the choice of what to remember belongs to us. This story is not about him. It is about 10 people who never came home. Their names are Joseph Otero, Julie Otero, Josephina Otero, Joseph Otero Jr., Kathryn Bright, Shirley Vian, Nancy Fox, Maureen Hedge, Vicki Wegerle, Dolores Davis. Their names deserve to outlast his.